That song, like, okay, this is completely off the cuff, just from anecdotal, if you will. The history of that song, or my message today is finding peace in the storm. And, there's many titles you can pick when doing a sermon. And I went with that, and so here we are. But it is well. The history of that is, I can't remember the name again, this is anecdotal off the cuff, but he was traveling across the seas with him in this boat, and all of his family in the other boat. And I believe it was a storm or something happened, and his boat was okay, but his family's was not, and they sunk. And he, just in a moment, his entire reason for moving to that, new land or wherever he was going was just gone. And yet, he wrote, "It is well with my soul." He found somehow peace in the storm. So please bear with me. I heard the song and was moved. So, yeah. So, anyways, the camp message is, or theme is the whole armor of God. So I'll just read through it real quick. Ephesians 6:13 through 18. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, and having girded your waist with truth, having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all of the fiery darts of the wicked one. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. Today my theme to use was peace, or the sandals of peace. And if it was the breastplate, that's easy. It guards your body. If the sword, that's pretty cool. Personally, even the belt, it holds everything together, like your core and such. But the sandals are kind of like, okay, you put on your shoes and you walk, right? Or at least that's kind of how I thought of it. But looking into the topic, much of the theme when it was being written was connotations that your common man could identify with. Today we think military, we'd think, tanks or jets or rockets or guns. Soldiers would be guns, not those things. But, that sort of thing. But in its time, the Roman soldier was effectively the elite. They had the best gear, the breastplate gave them six-pack abs in metal form, that kind of thing. But the sandals, I was kind of like, okay, maybe there's something interesting there, and there was. It was finding peace and stability in the storm, or after the storm. And the thing about the sandals that I found was that they were not just normal shoes, or sandals. For the time, they actually they were basically cleats, like spikes on the bottom so that they could stand and dig in so that the charging enemies, which is what they were facing, barbarians and such, they could stand, hold their shield, and no matter what kind of force came at them, they could hold their ground. And there were some spikes in the back of the heels to basically kick in, and again, towards that standing your ground, defending yourself. And that was kind of neat. Because it's not just, put on your shoes and go for a walk. It's, no, you take your stance and prepare. And so with all of my notes are on my phone. I'm not texting or anything like that. So the actual portion is, and having shod your feet with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Is kind of preparing yourself so that when adversity happens, you can stand and you're not, blown away. Another is synonyms for peace are like tranquility, privacy, stillness, or that. And because of that, I kind of tied it into stability, which is, if you're at peace, you're stable, you're, resting, taking it easy. And then preparation, definition is the act or process of making something ready for use or service, or of getting ready for some occasion, test, or duty. A state of being prepared. So it really is the, prepare yourself with peace so that you can stand and, keep your peace, basically. Excuse me. Okay, if you have a Bible, you can turn to Acts chapter 27, and then I am jumping to okay. In the Bible, when they harvest wheat, they allow the wheat a little time to sit and to dry, and they look for a day when the wind is blowing, so that they can scoop the wheat and toss it into the air. And the chaff, or the stuff you don't want, gets blown away, and the grain, the wheat itself, just falls so that they can, in place, basically. It doesn't get blown away. And when the winds come through your life, you can tell what you're made of, whether you're chaff or whether you're wheat, based upon how you respond to it. When circumstances happen in life, do you find yourself being blown away? Or can you stand? Do you maintain? If you can go through a windstorm in your life and still fall back into place, and like Job say, though he slay me, yet I'm going to trust him, then that means you might be wheat, or you are a wheat. And there's nothing that you are going through in your life or future that God doesn't know about. Even if you are on some dark back road in life, even if you're going through the darkest of valleys, the valley of the shadow of death, God knows you're there, and he'll be with you. Excuse me. So anyways, the verse in Acts 27 is about the Apostle Paul, and he was being transported to Rome because he wanted his case appealed by Caesar. And if you know your history of Paul and ships, they don't go together very well. They tend to end poorly. So Acts 27:39. Oh, wait. Okay, so just before that is, all in all, there were 276 persons on the ship, just a relative idea of how many there were. When it was day, they did not recognize the land, but they observed a bay with a beach, onto which they planned to run the ship if possible. And they let go the anchors and left them in the seas, meanwhile loosing the rudder ropes, and they hoisted the mainsail to the wind and made for shore. But striking a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the prow struck fast and remained immovable. But the stern was being broken up by the violence of the waves. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wanting to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that those who could swim should jump over first and get to land, and the rest, some on boards and some on parts of the ship. And so it was, they all escaped safely to land. And I want you to remember that. They all escaped. And then verse 1 of chapter 28. Now when they had escaped, they found out that the island was called Malta. And the natives showed us unusual kindness as they kindled a fire and made us all welcome, because of the rain that was falling and because of the cold. The Apostle Paul was a prisoner, unjustly a prisoner. And then he's in one of his shipwrecks. and he's suddenly in the ocean, and he's floating on a piece of the ship that had broken up to try and get to the shore. And he gets to the shore, and it's cold, and it's raining, and I'm sure he's worn out and weary, and he runs into some people that show him unusual kindness. Isn't it a great thing when people show us unusual kindness in life? The Bible goes on to say but when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, a viper came out, a snake, because of the heat, and fastened onto his hand. And so when the natives saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, "No doubt this man is a murderer, whom though he has escaped the sea, justice does not allow to live." But he shook off the creature into the fire and suffered no harm. However, they were expecting him to swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But after they looked for a time and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. Now that's obviously, he's not but yeah. Maybe you're going through a storm today. Maybe it's a very tremendous storm. Something has bitten you. Something has attached itself to you. Something has its venom inside of you. Whatever it is, the message that I'd like to communicate to you today is you've got to shake it off. If you can go through a storm in life and be disrupted, but still not dislocated, that means you are that wheat. You have stability. You can have peace by, standing. Or it's pretty, And it's very clear, the Bible is very clear, that storms are going to come in your life, in my life, in our lives. And the wind is going to blow, and the lightning's going to flash, and the thunder's going to crash. And sometimes we wonder whether we're going to make it or not. Sometimes you wonder if everything you have might be lost in that storm. And it was just that kind of storm that the Apostle Paul had experienced and was experiencing. He had cautioned the shipmaster, saying, "I have been shown that we shouldn't set sail from Crete. We need to stay here because there's a storm on the horizon." But the shipmaster, wanting to please his owner of the ship, sailed anyways. Sometimes, even if you've got the right answer, you can't make use of that answer, and, life kind of goes along. But you have to press on through that, through the difficulties. And just as Paul had predicted, he ran into the storm, a storm so adverse that the ship began to break up. And the storm's beating against the ship, and the pitch that's inside the wood planks began to come out, and the planks ship's falling apart. The ship was tattered, and the ship was torn, but God said to Paul, "This ship's not going to make it, but you will. You're going to make it." Sometimes some things that we are counting on don't make it. Sometimes people we're counting on don't come through for us in life. And with no sail, no rudder, basically the ship is breaking up and people are jumping overboard and they're grabbing for pieces. But I want you to hear again from verse 42. "And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners lest any of them should swim away and escape. But the centurion, wanting to save Paul, kept them from their purpose and commanded that those who should swim should jump overboard first and get to land." And then this part, "And all the rest, some on boards and some on parts of the ship, and so it was that they all escaped safely to land." Sometimes you have the power to escape the circumstances yourself. Other times it's just bits and pieces that carry you through. But with God, you'll find those bits and pieces. You may not expect them or know where to look, but they'll turn up. Yeah, and what I noticed here is the pieces of the ship were strong enough to get some to safety. Isn't it unique how things can fall apart in your life and yet God can get you through on just the broken pieces? Have you ever made it through on just the broken pieces? Have you ever made it on just a little piece of a job? You didn't know how you'd make it financially, but God gave you just that little piece. And you made it. Or maybe, a little piece of a relationship. You needed a friend, you just had a little friend for a little while, but hey, it got you through to, meet others, or, yeah. Maybe you had just a little piece of a car, but you made it. You made it on that little piece of faith, but it must have been at least as much as a mustard seed because, hey, you're here today. You made it through the storm. And it was... and it was that kind of storm that Apostle Paul was experiencing. And the ship may have been torn to pieces, and the pieces he was hanging on pushed him and the others to the little island of Malta. And he was tired, weary, pained, and it's raining and it's cold, but despite all that, if you think about it, he survived. He survived the storm. Life circumstances may be not great, but you're still here. You survived. You made it. And you think you're going to collapse in life, but you've got to deal with it. You thought that you couldn't live without that individual, but that individual passed away, or they deserted, or whatever, but you've got to deal with it. And sometimes it's just a matter of making it day by day by day. Your heart may be broken because of those circumstances, but you're making it day by day because God's grace is there in abundance. The storm came and the waters rose and... the storm came and the waters rose in your house and destroyed everything you had, and you lost all the pictures, and you don't know what you're going to do, and, well, you're here. You made it, and... And some of you have had to make it more than once through the storms of life, day by day. But you're here. You've made it. And Paul was a survivor. And the message is we need to be a survivor in life. And some of our stuff may not make it. Some of our jobs don't make it. Some of our friends didn't make it. Some of the cars didn't make it. But look, you're here today. You've made it. And Paul made it through the storm, and he made it through the rain. And yes, it takes a lot out of us at times. It does. We're spent, and we're weary, and we're burned out, and it takes some time for us to appreciate that we may not be where we want to be, but at least we're not out in the middle of the ocean. We made it to land. We made it to safety, and we praise God for that. Paul had come through the storm, and he'd come through the oceans, and he's sitting on the beach, and it's raining, cold, but there were some natives there, and they started to make a fire for him and the others. And I want you to notice what the Apostle Paul does. He's not content to just sit there, having gone through all that, wet, cold, tired, pain. Excuse me. He's not content to just sit there. He gets up. He picks himself up and starts gathering sticks. Someone's trying to help him. He's trying to help them to help him. It's the, you're going to get that corner, I'll help you get this corner, It's the, if you're going to help me, then I'm going to help you to help me. And by doing that, Paul was showing that he wasn't a victim, but a victor. And he went, give me half a chance, we're going to get past this in life, and he gathered sticks. Sticks isn't much, but it's something. It's a step in the right direction. And when he gathered sticks, it says a snake came out because of the heat and bit him. And Paul at this point could have went, well, what else could happen? I'm a prisoner unjustly. I'm in one of my 3 shipwrecks. I can't remember how many there were at this point, but one of the 3 shipwrecks. I'm in the water. Finally, I made it to shore, and it's cold, and I'm weary, and I'm worn out, but I made it. And then I got bit by a snake. But he didn't do that. He was a victor. He was probably praying about the storm, and he gets sidetracked and sideswiped by something else. You ever been praying about one thing and then get ran over by a Mack truck coming in the opposite direction? Verse 4 says, and so when the natives saw the creature hanging from his hand, they said to one another, no doubt, this man is a murderer. whom though he has escaped the sea, yet injustice does not allow to live. Or justice has been done in this man's life. This man survived the storm, and the natives said, but he's a murderer, and because of that justice has come his way. And here's the thing. And I hadn't really thought about this much when hearing these verses when I was younger. Paul, a murderer? No, he wrote, tons, the majority of the New Testament. He started churches. He went country to country preaching the word of God. But when you think about it, his past, he was a murderer. He had held the coats of the men who stoned Stephen. He rose to power, and his career, you might say, was elevated because he had put Christians in prison and killed them. So, it's one thing. Okay, it's one thing to take accusations when they're not true. That's easy. Oh, you're a liar. No, I'm not. Whatever. But when it's true, that's a different monster, if you will. So yes, Paul did what they said. That he did what they said, but he was not what he did. You see, the enemies will always try and define you by your acts of yesterday. Maybe it's 10, 15, 25 years ago. You did something, and they'll remind you of it that 10, 15, 25 years ago. Maybe you stole something that one time, or you lied about something, or, whatever it is, and maybe you've put that in your past, and you're now, a great member of the community, or, going to college, or whatever it is, becoming a good member of your community, and yet they'd still remind you, hey, back in X year you did this, and it's just, you have to understand that God does not define you by what you were yesterday. Amen. What you did does not determine what you are today and what you can be. So what Paul had to do was confront it. And the way that he confronts it is to just shake it off. And there's a much deeper meaning than just shaking off a snake. The deeper meaning is that he was shaking off that which he was confronted with. The storm in his life. Shook it off. What is it you need to shake off today? The amazing thing is this. You've got to stop agreeing with what your enemies are telling you, because their words can only be effective in your life when you agree with what they're saying. The enemy can tell you, you'll never change. You don't agree with that. The enemy can tell you that, people, sometimes friends, sometimes family, will tell you that you're, dumb or ignorant or never going to amount to anything in life. Don't agree with that. Don't walk in the counsel of the ungodly. If you do, the venom will get down in your spirit, and you won't be able to shake it off as easily. You don't agree with that. You stand up and you say, no, my life is not over. And I am a changed individual, and I'm a victor, not a victim. And I'm going to take responsibility and shake off that kind of talk. And you don't have to be satisfied with the words of the enemy. It's time to take responsibility and shake some things off in your life and move on. And then verse 6 says, however, they were expecting that he would swell up or suddenly fall down dead. But after they had looked for a long time and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. After he was bitten, the natives were just kind of standing around, waiting for him to fall over dead for a long time, apparently. And here's what you got to say to the people expecting bad things in your life. Like, you want to watch? That's fine. Go ahead. I'm not going to fail. I'm going to stand back up. I'm going to get over this. Watch me get over this. You're waiting for me to swell? I'm not going to swell. Waiting for break? not going to break. Here's the thing. The same people that called him a murderer, they showed him kindness to start with. They then called him they showed him kindness to start with, called him a murderer, and then they called him God. Isn't it amazing how fickle people can be sometimes? Yeah, so stick it out. God will change the minds of those who have a critical word towards you. You hang in there. And God will even use those people to, after their minds were changed, to God used the people after their minds were changed to underwrite Paul's ministry. And then notice what it says in verse 10. They also honored us in many ways, and when we departed, they provided us such things as were necessary. Are there some things that you need to shake off in your life and keep moving forward? Or are you just going to sit there and play out this affliction? Shake it off. Move on. And that's kind of the message today. Shake it off. I don't know what it means for you, but I'm sure you know exactly what it means for you. And it's time to say, watch this. Watch me survive. Watch me arise and keep moving with my life. So, take peace in the fact that even in the worst of storms, where the ship is being destroyed, and you don't know how to swim, God will provide the sticks, the bits and pieces that will carry you to shore. So when you get to shore, make sure to stand up and carry on. So that's kind of that. So if you could bow your head, I'll pray. And after this, if you would like prayer about anything in particular, I'll be up front, and maybe others will be too. I don't know. I'll leave that to them. And I'll pray for whatever your situation might be. So, all right. Dear Jesus, thank you that we could all make it here today. Despite all adversity, 2020 has been the strangest year I can recall ever reading about ever. But we all made it. We're all here, and circumstances may not have been good, but we made it. So, thank you for the watching over us that you do in our day-to-day life, so that no matter what things may come against us, we do not need to fear, because we have the God of the cattle, the God of the owner of the cattle on 1,000 hills looking over us. And so what do we have to fear? So please help us all to find peace and stability, and to get past whatever life may throw at us. In Jesus' name, amen.